Hello, everyone. How are you today? My name is Michaela Valletta, also known as the Renaissance Amazon. And in case you're unfamiliar with me, um, I am someone who I see, now I feel like starting this video over, but I'm on live. So I'm on my IG live. I'm going to repost this on my YouTube page. But in case you're unfamiliar with me, I'm somebody who just likes to study people and why they are the way they are. And that is from a physical health standpoint, a mental health standpoint, a spiritual health standpoint. And I'm into, holistic things. And I'm also from New York City, okay? I'm a Harlem native, uptown New York City, a hip hop fan. And today I just wanted to talk about DMX, okay? So, certain things that happen with celebrities or well-known people does bother me. And, really like over the past day, I've been in such a state of gratitude, right? And that's something that I do regardless. Like, I don't need Thanksgiving to make me be thankful, okay, and give thanks. I give thanks on a daily basis. But sometimes sometimes I have to stop and just recalibrate, okay? And, you know, yesterday, so I'm also, a huge cannabis advocate. I am not somebody who looks up to drug dealers, okay? These are just a few more things about me that I'm saying before I get into the meat of the conversation. I've never been one of those girls that wanted to date drug dealers or looked up to drug dealers. I never understood why there are certain girls who are like that. Like, I could understand maybe if you're a street chick, but like, girls who come from good homes and stuff, I never understood that. So I'm just saying, I was never one of those people. I never respected drug dealers. I'm not talking about people who sell weed. I'm talking about people who sell more hard drugs. Like, growing up in Harlem in the 80s, like every city in the U.S., there was drugs everywhere. But I remember being a kid in New York in the 80s, and there was crack vials all over the street, okay? So as a little kid, you just wanted to pick them up because they were just, they had colorful tops, and they were all over the place like Skittles, And your parents would be like, don't touch that. And they were just crackheads and crack vials everywhere. And so I never respected what drug dealers did to the hoods and how they destroyed black communities. But, I know that there are many different factors to things. So over the past couple of years, I've also understood that, a lot of people were in desperate situations, and that's what drove them to do that. I understand that to a degree. Even though I remember when Biggie, said in the beginning of his song Juicy that, he talked about people that called the police on him when he was just trying to feed his daughter. I never respected that line and that way of thinking, because I'm like, people have to do what they have to do to feed their kids. But it's one thing if someone says that they're selling drugs for that reason and they sell enough to feed their kids. But what we've seen with drug dealers is that they far exceed selling enough drugs to feed their kids or to feed themselves. They go far beyond that, to the point where they want to have the flashy chains and flashy cars and come through the hood flossing. I don't respect that at all, okay? I'm somebody who comes from a family of freedom fighters. My dad was in the front lines of the civil rights movement. My mother is a union organizer. I respect people who do real work and put in the work to try to make shit better, not the ones who are tearing things down and becoming rich off of it, okay? So that's not what I respect. So with that being said, I also, some years ago, used to judge drug addicts, like, oh, why would they be on those drugs and why can't they? I used to judge that. But I don't do that anymore either, because one of the things, too, I'm also, I have a background in science, and I'm into holistic stuff. And one of the reasons why I don't deal with prescription drugs or even over-the-counter commercial pharmaceuticals is because they are highly addictive. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I was addicted to Advil because I had migraines all the time, and I would take headaches. I had headaches, so I would take Advil for my headache, and then next thing I know, I'm taking Advils every day. And I think it might have been my twin brother who noticed it. And when I went to the doctor, that's when I learned that if you take medicine for your headache, okay, you take Advil, you take one of those NSAIDs. You take it a few times for a headache, and then you become addicted to it. So what happens is if you don't take the medicine, you get a headache. You don't even realize that. So you take headache medicine 2-3 times, and then now the headache is coming on because you're not taking that drug, right? And so next thing you know, you're getting headaches every day, you're taking the pill every day, you're not notice that you're addicted to it. When I learned that in the 7th grade, ever since then, it set me on a path of trying to understand, why do I have the headaches in the first place, and how do I fix that, okay? When I went into college, I was a biology major at first, and I went to exercise and sports science, nutrition science, and my whole adult life I've been researching stuff, how the body works, okay, and how to deal with health and all that. And I realized that, I tend to get headaches either when I'm severely sleep deprived, severely dehydrated, or haven't eaten enough for too long, And so when I feel headaches coming on, I try to I think back, am I dehydrated? And hydration is not about just drinking water. I have a video on hydration science. That's not true. It's more than that. But I would think back about that. I would think back about what I ate, my sleep, and I would try to correct those things instead of taking the headache medication. Okay, I'm so against taking headache medication. But people who have surgery, okay, I can understand how people get addicted to painkillers, first of all, because if you have a chronic illness like, people who have sickle cell anemia, there's people who have diseases where they're in pain every day. They get a bunch of surgeries, and they end up taking pain meds. Those pain meds are highly addictive, and it actually leads people to be addicted to heroin and other drugs. And then people blame them for that. Another thing, it's not their fault, because true addiction, okay, one thing that I love about cannabis is that it's not addictive. People might smoke a lot because they want to, but it's not because, they're addicted. When something's addictive, when you stop consuming it, you have withdrawal symptoms. So people who are taking hardcore drugs, when they try to stop doing that, they actually get really bad withdrawal symptoms. If you smoke weed and you stop, you're not going to get withdrawal. You're not going to be shaking in the bed and throwing up. No, okay? So some of you may be familiar with the work that I do around cannabis medicine. It's something that I've been avidly studying for the past couple of years, and I've worked with a number of clients who've had a variety of pain and health issues that the doctor would prescribe NSAIDs, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for. And those drugs, they numb the pain while stopping you from healing. When you use cannabis as medicine, it actually helps to take away the pain, but there's still a little bit there to let you know that you're not 100% okay. And it helps your body to heal, okay? And it's not addictive. And I've worked with a number of people with a number of issues with that. So I'm saying all this to say, and also a lot of people who are drug addicts, like hardcore drug users, what I have found is that they've had really traumatic childhoods. They have had bad trauma in their life, usually starting in their childhood. And so this has caused me to be in a state of gratitude, not just yesterday, but in general, because I realized that while I was raised in the hood, and while I might be from Harlem, and they filmed New Jack City and Juice on my block, part of Juice is filmed in my building, but yet I had 2 parents, okay, who loved me very much. My dad was always there in my life. I wasn't abused, okay? I got spankings like every other kid, okay, but I wasn't abused. My parents told me they loved me every day. They taught me things. I wasn't going hungry, So my twin brother and I never got caught up in anything stupid, okay? We never got into selling drugs or doing drugs or none of that. So I used to be judgmental about why people would do that. Like, okay, yeah, like there's crack around, but you don't have to sell it. You don't got to do that. I grew up around that. You don't have to do that. But then I started to realize the people who usually get caught up in that didn't have a dad, okay? Their dad wasn't around. Or they had screwed up parents who abused them. Some people got parents who, pimped them out. Some people got, being raped by their father. A lot of kids grow up with a lot of trauma, which is one of the things about this COVID situation, which I feel like is so horrible. The second that they said they were closing schools, even for 2 weeks, I thought about all the kids who are in abusive homes, okay? And I think it's selfish for people who have good homes and are able to feed their kids and are able to attend to their kids and help them with school. And I see them on the internet talking about, oh, my kids are thriving and this is great. And I'm like, but the good parents, and the kids who are in good homes tend to be the minority. Because as an adult, I have met more people than not who have been really badly abused as kids. You know, grew up with trauma, all kinds of molestation and trauma in the household, all kinds of neglect. And if you speak to public school teachers in any city, okay, one of my aunt who I was very close to, she was a public school teacher in Atlantic City. And I remember spending summers with her, and the kind of stories that she would tell me about her students and the kind of neglect and how she would have to bring underwear for kids to give them clean underwear. And, you know, we all know there are a lot of kids that school saves them, okay? There are kids, you know, where teachers see that they're being abused and, you know, have to feed them. The school saves a lot of kids. For a lot of kids, school is the safest part of the school day, okay? So, I mean, sorry, safest place for them to be and the safest part of their day is in the school. So, with all that being said, going back into DMX, you know, I remember back in the day on his albums when he would go on his religious rants, because I also wasn't raised religious, so I didn't really resonate with people who would be going on with biblical stuff. I don't resonate with that. I wasn't raised with that. So when I would hear him going on his religious rants a cappella, I would think to myself, like, he just sounded really troubled. You know, I didn't even listen to all of it, but I could tell there was a lot of pain. He was really troubled. And it wasn't something that I wanted to take on or listen to. I had no interest. So I would just turn it off and I would just say, God bless his heart. You know, I wish him the best, and I didn't listen to it, right? But now, you know, since hearing the news yesterday, you know, I really think about it, and I think about the fact that, you know, like with his childhood, I was never somebody who was an expert on his childhood, and I still don't know everything. But I have heard that he was very badly abused by his mother, you know, which is horrible. And because, you know, no kid should have to grow up like that. As a kid, there's no escape. You know what I'm saying? As a kid, you can't run away and escape your situations, you know. And so for the kids who grew up in good homes, just think about how you felt when you knew you did something wrong and you were going to get a beating when you got home. Or just think about how you felt when your mother popped you in the mouth for being out of line. Just imagine how the stress of that. Now, imagine a kid who is being badly abused all the time. What kind of stress that causes and what that imprints in a person. And then it starts in the womb. You know, if a woman is pregnant with a kid they don't want, right? And they're thinking and they're not eating good foods, they're not taking care of themselves, they're not nourishing themselves, you know, whether it be physically, spiritually, emotionally, you know, nutritionally. And then they have a baby that, you know, they're disconnected from and don't like and resent. They don't feed that kid good. They're not taking care of him. They're not filling him with love. Imagine how that could imprint that person. To me, I feel like that is the beginnings of drug addicts. I feel like the people that we see who are strung out on drugs really bad, they usually have really bad trauma and childhood trauma. Even somebody like R. Kelly, I honestly feel sorry for him. And I feel like I can't judge him for the shit that he's done, because do you know about his childhood? If you don't, you should listen, you know, to his brother talk about how their sister molested them and all kinds of sick stuff. If that happens to you in your developmental years, it is almost impossible for it not to create a sick person. And how that manifests is different in different people, right? So with DMX, I have, at first, like everybody else, you wanted to pray that he made it through, right? Like, the people don't want him to go. But then we also have to think, are we being selfish? Because why do people want him to stay? Because they want to be entertained by him, right? We want to enjoy his music. Oh, we want to hear more songs from him. We want to enjoy his music and all of that. But some people are so troubled. You know, when people use the term rest in peace. Now, sometimes I don't feel like that term is accurate, not appropriate, okay? Sometimes I don't feel like that is an appropriate term to use. Like when Nipsey died. I don't see how Nipsey Hussle could rest in peace. I'm sure he could have been thinking about going home to see his woman. He might have been excited about making love to her that night, seeing his kids, and then his life gets taken abruptly, no warning. He didn't want to die, and then he just gets murdered. I think when that happens, when you get murdered, and in those type of situations, I feel like that person's spirit is anything but at peace. Okay, and how can you tell him to rest at peace? His spirit probably thinking, damn, my kids, and I left certain things undone, right? But and I didn't get from Nipsey Hussle that he had all this pain, but DMX, every time you heard him go on his rants, you heard him tell stories about his life, you could tell how hurt he was. Okay, I think that I heard he was homeless as a teenager or something, and I heard him talk about how he looks up to firefighters because of how he had such bad asthma that he thought he was dying as a kid, and the stress that it caused, and the firefighters that came to save his life, and how he looked up to them and they were real heroes, you know. And he said he wanted to be a firefighter, and he sounded sad at the fact that he couldn't be because of his asthma and bronchitis. And see, asthma and all that also starts in the womb with the stuff that your mother was consuming when she was pregnant with you, and then what you're given as a baby. Okay, you know, I'm also a nutritionist, and some of you follow my work, and if you don't, you should, because you'll learn a lot. But all those things are highly preventable, and they're definitely for sure linked to poor nutrition. Okay, now a lot of people who think that they're feeding themselves well or feeding their kids well are not. Okay, trust and believe that. Then you have kids who are born by C-section. They're not breastfed, they're formula-fed babies, and they're born by C-section. Just starting off with having ill health and asthma and allergies and all these problems, right? That's not that child's fault. Now, the fact that, and then as a teenager, for someone to have laced a blunt with crack and got him started on, you know, a drug addiction path, that's also something he didn't ask for and didn't do. So to me, you can't blame somebody like that with the stuff that he's been through you can't blame him for being addicted to drugs and say that he's selfish because he was a drug addict. I don't see it that way. I actually have a lot of empathy and compassion, and I feel it puts me in a state of gratitude that, you know, I have to remind myself, and a lot more people need to remind themselves that maybe you came from a family with love. You know what I'm saying? You were nourished as a kid. You didn't come from those conditions. People who seem to be like, you know, really bad lifelong drug addicts, they tend to be in a lot of pain and trauma from their childhood. And addiction is a chemical thing that people often can't beat on their own. And so, in thinking all of this, I thought to myself, like, yes, we all want to pray that he makes it through, because he does have 15 kids, and you know, he's young. But as somebody who is also, you know, like I said, into holistic health, and holistic health for me is spiritual, it's as well as physical. And DMX has not looked healthy for me, and I've said that to people in the past couple of years. He did not look healthy. He looked like his chi, his life force was gone. He had all gray hair. He had dark circles under his eyes. His skin looked horrible. Okay, all those things are just like when your internal organs are messed up and you're really unhealthy, it shows physically. Okay, and how the condition of somebody's skin, the condition of their eyes, you know what I'm saying, the condition of their hair, all of that tells you something. And he definitely looked like his life force was sucked out of him. Just like when I heard about John Singleton last year, that he was dying before he died, and they said John Singleton's dying, he's in the hospital. And I remember seeing a picture of John Singleton at the time, and I knew he wasn't going to make it because he looked so sick. He had these black circles under his eyes. He looked so unhealthy. And so I knew when I saw his picture, he's not going to make it through. Now, somebody like DMX, you know, who he obviously has been in a lot of pain his entire life, okay? And so if he didn't make it, right, which I'm not trying to be negative. I mean, miracles happen every day, but it doesn't look good for him. The amount of time that he lost oxygen to his brain, it doesn't look good for him, right? I've heard that he's brain dead. So if he doesn't make it through, it's truly a thing of rest and peace. That's an appropriate time to use it, because he seems like he has never been at peace in his whole entire adult life. And when you're famous, okay, like I remember that song he made, What Your Bitches Want which your bitches want, from a, I don't say the N word, but you know, an nigga. When you're rich like that and you're famous, you don't know who really likes you for you. Everybody around you wants something from you. They want to know what they can get from you. I feel like that sometimes, and I'm not rich and famous, but just from the people that know me on social media, like, you know, I've had experiences where I thought somebody was my friend, but they really just trying to get something from me or whatever. But when you're like rich and famous, you don't know who you can trust, right? Everybody around you is trying to get something from you. And that's a sad existence. And especially when you never had love to begin with. Like somebody like Beyonce, of course, probably everybody around her wants something from her. But Beyonce comes from a loving family, loving parents, a loving sister. DMX, I don't think he had any siblings. Where's his dad? I don't know. His mother, to my understanding, treated him horribly. So who were the people that really loved him? Who were the people that really loved him for him, that didn't want something from him? Who were those people? That's a sad existence, right? So in New Orleans, one of my favorite cities, and if you've never been to New Orleans, you must go to New Orleans. It is, aside from New York, my hometown, New York City is definitely one of the dopest cities in the world, and so is New Orleans, okay? The Big Easy and the Big Apple. New York and New Orleans, both start with New. We both got nicknames with Big, right? I love New Orleans, a very special city. Can't emphasize that enough, right? But in New Orleans, they believe in dancing at death, okay? Second line traditions. So it's a big party, a big celebration. And in Haiti, you know, they have the Day of the Dead, which also Mexicans celebrate. And it's a big party for the dead, for those who've recently passed and those who passed. Sorry. Those who passed further back. And to some people, they could be like, how could you be having a party at a funeral? Because that makes sure that it serves a few purposes. Number one, helps that spirit, uplifts them, and helps them go to where they're supposed to go to in peace. That they get there. Because I've looked around the world, like every culture has had traditions at death they might bury people with certain stones or certain objects, you know, the singing, the praying, to help guide that spirit in the afterlife to their transition to the next place, okay? And even though I wasn't raised with religion, I do believe in prayer. I don't pray to Jesus, but I do believe in prayer, right? Whether you're praying to the ancestors, which is what I do, or Mother Goddess, Mother Earth, or Jesus, Lord, Allah, whoever. Like, prayer is important, and I do believe that. And I'm also a student of the dances of the diaspora, particularly in the Americas, the Congo, and then dances in the Americas, be it Haiti, DR, PR, Cuba, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela. You know, I'm into, and when you start to study those dances, you learn a lot about the belief systems, because the dances of the diaspora are connected to our cosmology, medicine, important beliefs. And I've learned so much about Afro-Indigenous history. When I say Afro-Indigenous, I say indigenous, I'm talking about First Nations, Native American people, right? Which people in the Americas, whether it's from the Caribbean or North America, most of us have native blood as well. So, and all these traditions also are African and native, right? So I've learned so much about Afro-Indigenous cosmology, belief systems, history, that's not in books from studying the dances. And so, you know, it's believed that when you can't let somebody go, when they die, and you just are mourning so hard that you just don't want to believe this person is gone, and you don't want to let go, that holds the spirit in limbo. It prevents that spirit from transitioning into the next realm, or wherever they're supposed to go next. It prevents them, like you're holding on to them, you're holding them there. And so this is why I started thinking, like, if DMX, you know, he seemed like a troubled spirit his entire life. He seemed like he was in so much pain. If it's his will to leave, if he doesn't make it through, instead of us, praying to keep him here. We should be praying that he really does rest in peace. Praying to uplift his spirit into the light so it can go where it's supposed to go safely. Give him that energy, give his spirit that energy. And so I don't want to, because he technically wasn't dead yet, I don't want to pray for that. But I also don't want to pray that he makes it through if that's not what's meant for him, because him making it through might just be him being here and still being in so much pain. He was in so much pain. So that made my prayer say, I pray for whatever is in his highest good, okay? I remember I lost a son 10 years ago, right? And it was a situation where you want to pray for, him to stay. But then I'm like, if he makes it, the type of things that could be wrong, the kind of life he could have could be really horrible. So it may be, sometimes death is a blessing. So my prayers were, whatever is in his greatest good is what I pray for. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever, I don't want to pray, nobody wants to wish death on anybody. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to do that, not unless they're evil. And my side note, okay, is that, this might sound fucked up, but I dead-ass mean it, as I think about Dr. Dre, who I can't stand, okay? But Dr. Dre is an asshole, and so is Eazy-E and all the other fucked up people in NWA, but Dr. Dre has beat so many women, not just Michelle A, okay? Not just domestic stuff, but Dee Barnes, he picked her up by her hair, bashed her head into a wall, beat the shit out of her, dragged her to the bathroom, sexually assaulted her. Dre had bodyguards around him that were stopping anybody from helping her. One guy tried to help Dee Barnes, and Dre's bodyguard hit him in the mouth with a gun and knocked his teeth out. Fuck Dre, okay? And when he had his aneurysm, he should have been dead. That would have been great, okay? That's somebody I would wish death on, just because it happened. I don't sit around wishing that he would die, but I'm saying when that happened, I'd have been like, but he made it. Somebody like DMX, who also, who's going through, he's going through, and he may not make it. That's just one of the things that show you life is not fair. I remember as a kid, people always say, life is not fair, and that is one of the truest statements that people have to remember. Life is not fair. And a lot of times, the good die young. And the evil people, they live forever. Now, in Dre's defense, you could say he also had a bad childhood, but having a bad childhood, I can have empathy for you and the things that you do, but not when you start hurting other people in that way. I don't like it when a big ass dude is beating up little chicks, and you can't keep that same energy and take it to a dude, but you doing that to women. I don't respect that at all. So whatever trouble DMX was going through, he didn't take it out on beating women and doing stuff like that. He took it out on himself by abusing drugs, okay, and stuff like that. But you could tell he had a good spirit, and he's a good person, and he reminds me a lot of New York dudes, Like, I love my city. I love New York men. New York men have the illest swag, to me, in the country. New York and Detroit. Chicago, too. Chicago's half and half. Chicago has a lot of dudes who are a little off, like Kanye. A lot of dudes like that in Chicago. But there are also some good dudes in Chicago, too. But I feel like just in general, like New York and Detroit, like, the men have swag. No offense to the Cali dudes, but California men are the worst to me in America. But I'm not saying that there are no good dudes in California. So if somebody from California listens to this and you get mad, I'm not saying that there are no good men in California, but they're far and few between. So, and also, men from New Orleans, very respectful. They might be some killers, but they're very respectful. I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans since 2007, so what is that, 14 years? I've never had any men in New Orleans disrespect me, or I've never seen them disrespect a woman. They're very respectful men. So I feel like in New York, New York men get a bad rap. But I feel like, and DMX is from uptown. So for those of you who don't know New York, he's from Yonkers, which is a suburb of the Bronx, but it's like 15 minutes from where I live. Uptown New York City, okay? And people say uptown, they're talking about Harlem and the Bronx, kind of united. And hold on. Men from New York, I could say in general, tend to be, like, I'm not going to say there's no disrespectful men in New York, because in the 90s there were some. But generally speaking, I do feel like New York men are pretty respectful. And DMX reminds me of a lot of dudes I know from New York. Like, just a good dude, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, I guess the last thing I want to say too is, I hate it when I see kids. You know, I remember when I was a kid, I don't remember what happened or what I expected from my mother. But I remember one day my mom said to me, you know, just because I'm your mother doesn't mean I have to do anything. I don't have to do shit. Like, there are parents who don't do anything for their kids. So, and when she said that to me, that always stuck with me my entire life. And then I remember one time on Christmas, like, I remember my first Sony. One time my parents gave me my first Sony, and when they gave it to me, you know, inside there was like a booklet with all the different my first Sonys that, you know, models they had. And I remember telling my dad, oh, I like this one, but I would have rather had this one. And my dad told me, when you get a gift, you should never say that. Be grateful for the gift that you were given. You should never get a gift and tell somebody you would rather have this or that. And that always stuck with me, because he's right. And as I grew up, I saw a lot of people with really screwed up parents. People whose parents never gave them shit. People whose parents never told them they loved them. People's parents who didn't make sure that they ate. There are a lot of kids who weren't getting fed. The parents were strung out on drugs, neglected them, put them in abusive situations. And so all of that is even more so why I can't stand ungrateful kids. I can't stand ungrateful kids. I can't to this day stand ungrateful kids or people that's complaining. When you have good parents who are making sure you eat and are not abusing you, making sure you have a warm place to sleep at night, you shouldn't be complaining about shit. And I feel like these days there's a lot of ungrateful kids, and I hate that. And then sometimes some of the most spoiled kids are the most ungrateful. I have no patience for that at all. Okay, because then you got people like DMX who grew up horribly. So if you got good parents who love you and take care of you, and you want to be complaining because you don't got this and you don't got that, or they don't want to give you this, imagine if were in DMX's situation. Which is one of the things I never understood about Kobe Bryant and his parents. I could never understand why he had a problem with his parents. I don't care that his mother auctioned off his old trophies. So what? If I was a multimillionaire, there's nothing my parents couldn't have, and they'd be above my wife or so-called husband. Like, some new person who I married wouldn't be above my parents, because you wouldn't be who you are without them. In order for Kobe to be this basketball star, he had to have parents that made sure he ate, had a place to sleep, you know, make sure he got to certain things. If Kobe was in the conditions that DMX was in, I'm not going to say that he wouldn't have been who he was, but it would have been a whole lot harder and a lot more unlikely. So Kobe should have always been grateful to his parents. Now, unless there's something that I don't know, because sometimes we don't know, unless his parents abused him or did something horrible that we don't know about. But from what I could tell, he had good parents who took care of him, who were there for him. His dad was there for him. So why grow up and act like you're not talking to your parents and you mad at your mother because she sold some shit? So what? I wouldn't care. I wouldn't give two shits if my mother sold some old trophies of mine for money and auctioned it off. I'd be like, good mom, get all the money you could get. Why would I be mad at that? So that I could never understand. I don't like people who do that. Your parents sacrifice a lot. Parents sacrifice a lot, especially if you have good parents. They sacrifice a lot for you. So how dare you grow up and forget that shit? Now I really understand, you know, if you're black, most of us, our mothers said to us at some point, I brought you in this world and I take you out of it. And I remember being a kid thinking, you'll kill me? Like, I used to be like, you'll kill me? Like, oh my gosh, she's threatening to murder me. But that's real. Women go through a lot in childbirth. Most women say they feel like that's the closest they felt like they were to death. A lot of women feel like they're dying. A lot of women do die. Okay? So we should forever be grateful to our mothers. If you had a good mother, if you had a mother that was horrible and abusing you, and that's understandable. And then you really got to work on those wounds, because people like that are usually really screwed up. And I've noticed that boys who have horrible relationships with their moms, or their mother was really abusive to them, they usually never recover from that. And then if your dad wasn't there, you got a mother wound and a father wound. And no kid should have to be born into those situations, but they are. The other thing with the drug dealers. So, you know, the way that drug dealers are celebrated. And even when I hear old school rappers talk about new school rappers, and they like, oh yeah, we talked about selling drugs, we didn't talk about doing drugs, and these young kids now, they talking about doing drugs, and that's corny. Well, let's think about this for a second, because, you know, I believe in critical thinking. If you guys were all selling drugs back in the day, you don't think you might have contributed to young people now being drug addicts? A lot of young people now who could be strung out on drugs might have come from parents who were drug addicts because of you drug dealing people who pushed drugs in the communities and acted like it was fine, and acted like, oh, I'm just filling a need. People want the drugs anyway. But our communities were depressed. And instead of you choosing to do something to uplift your community, you did that. That's not something to be proud of. And then you did it in an excessive level, so you could brag about your chains and your cars and your sneakers and go through the hood. I have no respect for that. Zero. And now, DMX, somebody sold him those drugs. Somebody sold him those drugs. And what they sold him might have been laced with something. It might have been bad. They might have purposely been trying to kill him. But everybody knows who DMX is. We all know he's been going through rehab. Somebody sold him that. Just like with Whitney Houston. Are you proud of yourself? But what? Hip-hop culture celebrates drug dealers, which is hypocritical. Which is one of the things I didn't understand about Nipsey Hussle neither, because it's like, oh, everybody wants to cry because Nipsey got shot. But don't all you guys rap about killing people? Nipsey himself rapped about killing people. So if you rapping about killing people, same thing. Pop Smoke rapping about shooting people. Now you get shot. Now everybody wants to cry. How hypocritical is that? How are you rapping about murdering people and then you get murdered and everybody is like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. People get murdered every day in the hood. And a lot of hip hop artists glorify that, rap about that. But then you want to cry when it's somebody that you love? Let's stop being hypocritical. Let's just stop being hypocritical. Like I said, I'm a hip hop fan, but I'm also a critical thinker, and I speak the truth, and I'm gonna say what it is. You know? And anybody ever seen a crackhead OD? Crack is a fertility drug. People think I'm joking when I say that, but everybody I know, male or female, or not know, but have observed or who are on crack, they have mad kids. I've never seen a crackhead with no kids. I've never seen a crackhead with one. They always got multiple kids. So I always say it's a fertility drug. And you don't usually see people OD on crack, but they can OD in heroin and other drugs. So to me, it makes me think like we don't even know if somebody could have killed DMX. You know what I'm saying? They could have purposely been like, oh, we want to take him out of here. But somebody sold him those drugs. So there's a lot to think about. A lot to think about. It's multi-layered. And so I just want to say right now that I'm in it. You know, last night I just had so much love in my heart. The sadness I felt for him and his tortured life, it changed for me into having so much love and gratitude in my heart for the people. The fact that I came from a loving home. The fact that it's not my place to judge people who do things like that, who didn't. You know what I'm saying? And you know, I wish his spirit the best. You know, some people are asking me questions on here that I already answered. Some of the people are asking me questions. I don't know if you heard this in the beginning, but you should go back and listen to the beginning because I already addressed some of those things. But whether he makes it or he doesn't, I wish his spirit the best. And if he doesn't make it, I feel like it's time to celebrate. Not time to mourn and cry. I mean, we could mourn in celebration. Uplift his spirit. Celebrate who he was. You know what I'm saying? And pray that his spirit goes in peace and that his family will be okay. That's where I'm at. So I just need to say that because it's been in my mind. And that's my 2 cents on the topic. And I will be reposting this onto my YouTube page, okay? So I hope you guys have a lovely fertility day, also known as Easter, which is truly a celebration of the goddess of heaven, Owestre, Ishtar. Do your research. And have a lovely day, people, okay? Bye.